Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So glad that you're here. Just getting my screen set up a little bit for us so that everybody can see everyone coming on the call. We've got Pat DeLuca who's joined, Peter V's coming in, Brian Wilson, Dave Tillman, and Tom Apeland. The usual suspects are here, and we see you, usual suspects, on the attendee list. Thank you so much for being here. You guys all know that we love these opportunities to get together in a big group a couple of times a year. We also love the opportunities to work with you on a one-on-one basis when you send us your issues, your questions, your training requests, your feature requests. So please keep those coming on into us on a regular basis, and we'll stay connected all year long that way, including these bigger group forums. We are so excited to share with you version 28 features. We think it's a very healthy list, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So again, thanks for being here. I'm going to hand this over to Brian Wilson for a quick welcome. Then I'll come back and cover just a couple of logistics, and then we will dive right into the version 28 good stuff for you. So Brian, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks, Kathy, and hello to all our DP2 customers out there. Thanks again, by the way, for adjusting as we shifted the date on this. We do aim to have the entire DP2 team in attendance for these, so rescheduling made sense. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out. We still had something pop up at the last minute for Bob Morawski, so you'll notice we're going without Bob today. It's okay. We didn't want to reschedule right at the last minute on you, but we'll just make sure we get him for the summer webinar. So catch Bob in a few months down the road, right? Mostly just want to say hi and welcome. I think we're all pretty well versed in how these are going to go. We'll roll through this in not too much time. Aim to have you back to work in an hour, maybe hour 15, something like that. Going forward in the next week or two, we'll have the recording up on the YouTube channel. So of course, we'll get version 28 out the door in probably next week. So just keep an eye on your mailboxes for updates on that. Other than that, I think we're ready to go. So let's just move right along and get back to Kathy and over to Pat and then Pete, and we'll get started.
Great. Thanks, Brian. So just a couple of logistics here, everyone. You know, I was supposed to ask you this right away. If you all can hear us okay, can you just give us a hand raise in your GoToWebinar panel? We're going to use that hand raise mechanism a couple of other times throughout the webinar. So hopefully this opportunity will give you a chance to find it. I see several hand raises going up. Awesome. I assume if you can't hear us, we probably would have had a question. That's the other logistic I want to share with you, is that anytime during the webinar that you have a question, you should see your GoToWebinar questions panel and box. Go ahead and type in your question at any time. One of us is always going to be presenting, and we have a fair amount of content to cover. So we have a Q&A session at the end. It would be great if you save some questions for the end, because that's when we get to converse with you and hear your voice. But if you have questions during the webinar, other than the person who's presenting at the time, the rest of the DP2 team is behind the scenes, and they're poised and they're expecting your questions, and they'll be able to respond directly to you. So you know where the hand raise is, you know where the question box is, I think. Oh, and then just setting an expectation for today's session. You may have seen the agenda roll by. This is all the goodness that we're going to cover. We do recommend that you download onto your computer or a hard copy the agenda, which is the What's New document. Great place for your notes, great place to put an asterisk if something's really of interest to you when you do get version 28. But just to level set here, we don't have time to really go through this stuff in a whole lot of detail. This is not the time or the place for you to actually be trained on a lot of this stuff. I mean, too much time would go by between now and when you install version 28. So just please take this for what this is. It's a high-level overview designed to pique your interest, designed to get you on the latest version, version 28. We know that some of you install within 0 to 6 months. Some of you install between 6 to 12 months. We totally understand that you have your own upgrade schedule for various reasons. And if you see something on this list, or you hear us cover something on the list that's not really intended for you, but for somebody else in the lab that may not be on the call today, please, we would ask you to let them know, give them a heads up, ask them to watch the video that Brian said will be posted by early next week, and just help us share the good news and the good information. And if you hear something during the session today that's not really you, that doesn't really fit in with your role in the lab, hang in there with us. We think it's always very empowering to hear what DP2 can do, the big picture of DP2, even if it's not your role. We've said it for about 25 years that knowledge is power. So soak it in, tell somebody in the lab who you think it's appropriate for, and just hang in there with us as we cover stuff that's appropriate for both programmers and operators and print production managers and whoever you are in the lab. And with that, I want to share our first poll before I turn it over to Pat DeLuca. So give me 1 second to bring the first poll into the mix. And it's a poll that does help us understand who's on the call. You can answer multiples of these, everyone, because we know that many of you wear many different hats. So you can choose them all if you want. I'll load it. We don't display in here who's answering how, so none of that information comes through when I show the results of the poll. But for example, if we knew that there were no programmers on the call, which we sort of knew, because we can sort of tell when we look at the list who's who, not in all cases, but in many cases. But it's just good for us to know, to level set, to see what type of a range of users we have on the call. So it looks like I have most of the responses in. So I'll just close the poll and then share the results with everybody. And as expected, we have a good mix of users in the call, which is great. So one more time, just hang in there with us. If we're covering a bullet point on our agenda that doesn't necessarily pertain to you, share it or learn it or acknowledge it and accept it and grow from it and learn from it, and we'll take it from there. So with that, thanks for answering the first poll. We have a couple of more throughout the webinar, and I'll pass this off to Pat DeLuca to get us started. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy. And now I just have to make myself the presenter. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if, let's see. Why is it not sharing? Hopefully, can you see my screen now?
We got you.
There you go, Pat. We got you.
Very good. Thank you. I have a second monitor up for one of the things I want to show you today. And of course, it's on the wrong side because of the way I had to configure my office. It a little confused me. So I want to just repeat what Brian and Kathy said and let you know how delighted, hi everyone, let you know how delighted we are to share a little bit of time with you. And I am gonna be following the agenda based on the What's New document. So I'll be going through some user experience, some product and layout, some book and packages, enhancements that are made in version 28. There's a lot of different items that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm going to do my very best not to let my screen get too crowded and to close things as I go. I'm going to leave the What's New up here kind of as a frame of reference, and I want to use it for a couple of things. So that as I'm going through, you can kind of refer back to it if you need to, kind of especially as I begin to open up windows. The place that I'm going to start, though, is one of the enhancements that we've made in version 28 is to the order entry taskbar, which has been there from the beginning, right, forever. It's our window into all the different workflows and the different categories. But what we've added in 28 is kind of the ability to not just gain insight and help into what's happening, but to kind of act on if you have a question or you're looking for something, or you actually even want to open the interface from the order entry taskbar. So by selecting F1, now it brings up what we're calling the taskbar help. And just for basic functionality, right, we've got the expand all and the collapse buttons. We have the ability to sort in a category. So now, although what I'm going to do isn't going to affect the taskbar itself, it is going to affect what we're looking at here. So if I select sort, and as an example, I'll just open up admin for now. You can see that although it has not changed what's happening in the user taskbar now, as I'm looking for things and I'm trying to understand what I'm doing, it's DP2 is going to allow me to do it in an alphabetical order, which for those of us who have searched for things, this is kind of a nice little feature right here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. One of the things that I want to point out, you may have noticed it, is when I selected a certain category in the taskbar help, it kind of snapped to, so that the user taskbar is a reflection of what I'm looking at. And as I go through, I can, I can select, and what's going to happen here is I'm simply one click on an item inside of that category, and it is showing me that help from within the DP2 help files, so that I can navigate pretty much anywhere inside of here just simply by clicking on one of these items. And it's really, really nice way to be able to look for things from the place where you may actually be working. In addition, it's fully searchable, so that it's either a full word, a full phrase, or just, a partial piece of it. And you can go through, and that will also allow you to kind of look at, as you can see, these are enabled, but it's going to allow me to go ahead and look at, the specific thing. I can also, by using control click, bring up that window right from within that taskbar help, which is a really nice way to have these things happen. So that's kind of that first feature that I'm going to show you. And I'm going to leave, I think I'm just going to leave it up. I'm going to go to a couple of different things inside. I'll use the taskbar help as my way to navigate it. I'm going to go ahead and clear out my search up here. So it's going to take me back. I'm going to go back to the admin taskbar. I want to talk about a couple of different system settings that we've enabled that are going to allow you a little bit of, in some cases, control, and in another case, a little bit of freedom. It's kind of both. So I'm going to go to the admin taskbar. I actually can operate right from in here. But what I want to do is go to the system settings menu. And again, you can see the help here. If I click on it, it's going to open up system settings, and I'm just going to minimize this for now. So there are 4 new settings in the system settings that are going to allow you very specific type of criteria. Some of this was based on questions that we got from customers, feedback, or things that as we were looking at problems that were happening inside of things that were happening in service desk, problems that labs were having that were enabled. So there's 2 that will allow you to kind of modify, not modify is probably too strong a word, but it's going to allow you to change a dialogue so that when you are working on particular things, it's going to allow you to take that interface and move it off screen. So the first one of those is called the composite helper, and it's the type is composite helper. The item is used dialog, and by default it'll be set to 0. The other one, I'm going to open these up to kind of show you there's a lot to see, but the other one is export order items, and the same thing. The type is the export order items, but the item itself is used dialog, and it'll be set to 0. And what that's going to allow you to do, and I'm just going to zip down here to export so I can show you, is when you have the export order images window open, it'll now, actually, that was the wrong one. I went one too high. Well, this one already did it, right? You can move it off screen. The thing that we added is the ability to open up the export order items window and do the same. So that now that will allow you to work off screen. The same thing is true for the composite window, so that when you're working on a composite, or you're using the edit tool in the composite, close that. It will allow you to open up the composite and just getting some little reminders of how you go through things, right? When you're working on the, and again, it's found from the layout helpers, when you're working on the composites in edit, it's going to allow this window as well now to move off screen so that you can get it out of your way when you're working. The other two system settings that we've added is, and I'm going to use, I'm actually going to navigate there from here for printing. It's kind of going to open up the printer queues and the printers themselves, these two windows. One of the challenges that a couple of different labs have faced, and one did this year, was that by accident, some of the printer queues were deleted. So what we've added is the ability to password protect the delete on both the printer queues and the printer data table. So that if somebody comes up here, and again, it's a right click, it'll work for right click, it'll work for the actions, it'll work for the button, it's going to ask you for that password. And of course, if now, obviously your password needs to be better than mine, but if they, if they put in a partial, it's going to tell them it's incorrect. You'd have to have the full password in order to be able to delete something, which I'm not going to do. So these will have to be manually entered in, and actually is in the what's new. So the type is password. The item is either delete printer or delete printer queue, and then you have to put in a password. And I strongly recommend against using the one I have in here, but it expedited for me to be able to show you that. So those are kind of three different areas where we're kind of putting in features and enhancing things to make things a little bit easier, or to again answer to challenges that customers have faced. One of the other, well, I'm going to just kind of switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to talk about some of the product and layout enhancements, and talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing there. And I think everybody will remember, I hope, if you were here the last time, we have a functionality in DP2 that we introduced in version 27 called modify multiple layouts. To get to it from the product window, you would go to manipulate layouts, and it's the one on the bottom. If you wanted to do a similar thing for the order items, you would go right up here, and it's like the fifth item down, which is modify multiple order items. And this is that bulk tool that we implemented so that you can kind of set up the change or multiple changes, and then you can drag and drop order items. It would have worked from products for layouts as well. You can drag and drop from the thumbnails of the UI. You could drag and drop from the data table, if you go to products or layout, order items and edit, or you could actually drag it from the file folder, because these are changes that are made on disk. We've added a couple of things to this that that will allow you to change the node names and the node numbers. And I'm just going to kind of point out where these are. These would be here for image or text node. And just if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to say it, and that'll be in the video. And you'll be able to, I think we also noted it in the help files, because the node name is fairly obvious, but it took me a little while to remember, and actually had to go find it and ask. To change the node number of an image or a text node, that keyword is INTID. I'm assuming, I'm not going to say what I'm assuming that means, but then the other one is, of course, node name, which is a little bit more obvious. And these are both, part of selected node numbers. And I'll just, as I'm kind of dawdling along and searching for it, mention that you have, you could select node numbers and text numbers, or text and node names and ID and labels and background nodes, etc. So any of those number sorts, I guess you can call them, and then you can change them based on the keywords for those. And that again is the modification that we've made for modify multiple products. And just I will kind of reinforce a little bit for this particular interface that you can do this with no backups, modify with backups, restore from a backup and delete the backups, and mention that, and this is described in much more detail in our last seminar, but also mention that there's only one layer of undo. So you have some kind of a little bit of advice in the help about some ways to think about doing that productively. So that is modify multiple helpers. Yep, modify multiple layers. So the next piece that I'm going to move on to, or the next feature and enhancement I'm going to move on to, is in the layout helper itself. So I'm going to move down and find myself a composite. And I'm going to do something that's really obvious, just so that you visually can see the change that I'm making. I don't know that this is an approach that you would take to making that specific change, but I'm going to open up one order item, and I'm going to use the same method, right, where I'm going to go to layout helpers, except in this case, I'm going to go to nodes. And the functionality that we've added for the nodes is this ability to, and I'll just select a group of these, right, is to be able to, again, modify multiple nodes. And we have the tool, there's a new icon called modify multiple nodes. And that icon is going to allow you to, for again, image, text, logo, or all, depending on the keyword that you choose. Now, in this case, I'm going to choose one that's really simple and, kind of obvious, because I want you to be able to see it and get a sense of what it's doing. So I'm just simply going to change the density of these so that it's something visually, and apply it. And then you'll be able to see it in the layout, right? You can kind of see they all went dark because I added 50, units of density to it. And you have the ability to undo it as well. But this is just, it's a way in which when you have to make a change to an existing product or order item, that you'll have the capability to do this without having to go one by one by one. I'm going to close it. I'm not going to save it. I just wanted to be able to show it to you. Okay, so that is the layout helper node selector. It's also going to allow you to, I should have left that open. Just realized there was one other thing I wanted to show you. Okay, let's bring that up. One of the other things that we've enhanced in this version is the ability to, kind of move up and down and allow you to, it's going to automatically kind of move up and down and auto scroll to the selected number so that you don't have to go looking for it. DP2 is going to automatically respond to kind of whatever it is that you're trying to do or doing inside of a more complicated layout. The last thing that I want to show you kind of in this little group is something that Kathy's going to talk to in more detail. She worked on this and she did a phenomenal job. I'm going to show it to you in the help so that I don't really want to open it because I want her to, because she did all the work on this one. I'm just going to kind of show you that it's there. What we've done is, and kudos to all the folks that worked on this, we have explanations and resources around using and creating macro modifiers in KPL Help. We have it in the Programmer's Assistant, and we've talked about it at different workshops, and we have a PowerPoint presentation that we did eons ago. But we have not actually really integrated it into this help and into the program itself. So for the first time with this version, we're going to have, there's a layout that not only does it, do we have this explanation in the help about, and in KPL Help about how it works and how macro modifiers work, but it gives you a whole slew of samples. So it's a really nice thing. I'm just going to highlight it, and Kathy's going to go ahead and she's going to be the person to go through it with you, which I think is great. So the last couple of pieces that I wanted to show you are around books and packages, and I'm just going to shoot down to the bottom of this. The Oh, actually, I've skipped. I got one more thing I want to show you. I believe I forgot. I skipped over to my notes, but I do absolutely need to see this. So this is about the ability to justify and align image nodes. And I'm going to open up this very simple layout to kind of show this to you. It's what we've done, and we have had this for text notes for quite some time. I'm not sure exactly how long. I can't think of when we didn't have it. But now we actually have it for image nodes, which is really great. So on the crop tab, we've introduced the ability, you can see it down here in the bottom half, to justify and align an image inside a node. So it doesn't work on crop for obvious reasons, right? Because crop is bringing it out to the longest and shortest side, respectively, right? It works for fit and for preserve. I have this on preserve because it was a little bit easier to see. But the idea here is that I have this center to center, but the concept is you can go ahead and you can move the image node from top to bottom and to the right or to the left. And this was based on a customer request because they had a group shot, you know, it was knocked out, and I'm going to kind of show you that group shot actually. Where I've just done kind of a little sample of it here. And but what was happening was they had a layout that had a logo in it. And the logo was, because by default we have been centering it from top to bottom, side to side. So they would have to continually move the node around they were putting their logo in, not using insert logo, which has some capabilities there, but it's a little bit different of an approach. But this would allow them to then, given that they had a basic understanding of where the knockouts were going to be and how the sport team or whatever the group was, or in this case a pair, they could then, you know, have that logo set up so that in this case I set it up to the top and to the right. As a way to kind of manage that. And it's a very nice way to be able to take as an example, this particular logo is a landscape, you know, and many logos are, or they're long, or, you know, people who could design them were thinking about how you were going to actually use them in production. So this is another feature, another layout feature that we've introduced in version 28. So then moving on to books and packages, which is what I'm glad I didn't forget to say that. So we've got, for books and packages, we've got some new sorts that are going to allow you to reverse the order and have that seen in production. So as an example, I'm just going to I'll show this to you for this particular package. But when I right click now, we've got sorts, and we've had sorts. And the sorts are different than filters or different views because the sorts actually act on them. They make something that goes into production, so that the way in which the sort is enabled, that's how it's going to come out of the printer. So we do have the width, length, sequence, and subsequence, and those have been there. I just want to revisit for a moment because this is something that I think you forget. I know what wasn't top of mind. I'd kind of forgotten about it until I had to go in here. Right, so this is going to be applied, the ones that are applied by width, length, sequence, and subsequence, those are applied to the entire order, and those are not, like, you can't go back, can't change it back, and that's how it will output out to the printer. And you know, and it's actually, there's a nice little explanation here in the warning box about if, you know, you're losing time having multiple cassettes and you want to send everything the same size out to a printer and just kind of gain that efficiency and so on. But these are production decisions. So it's an important difference between something like view or view items, where you're just seeing the order items in a different way. So for packages, when you get to that sort menu, you're going to see a new items that says reverse the images of a package. So this is a production choice. So that if I reverse these, you know, now they're in the original order because I might have reversed them several times in the last, you know, couple, 3 days. But they'll reverse those, and that's how those will print, which is a kind of nice for those folks who are trying to manage something that's happening downstream and needs to have things printed in a particular order. If this were a book, the sort would be not in this list of sorts, but under books. you would see the same thing. And you would go ahead and you'd be able to reverse the pages of a book. I want to just highlight something before I say yes or no to this. When you auto select a book in DP2, it's going to select the entire book. But one of the other kind of really nice little tweaks in this version 28 of DP2, is that now if you want, you can select in the order that you want to select inside a book. It's not going to automatically select the whole book. It'll allow you to, you know, select as you need to select and move on from there. The last change that I'm going to talk about isn't really something that I can show you, but I do want to mention, and that is, and actually I'll bring up the help. Go back to what's new so you can see what I'm talking about. So the last one I'm going to talk about, I do have one other thing after that, but is export image enhancements. And that is in export the image commands where you have an automated workflow that's using the command importer. If there are no images to export, it used to error out. So you'd have all these errors that you had to chase. And now if there's nothing there to export, it's really not an error. So it's not going to treat it like an error. So you won't see it as an error, and you won't be gathering up information that you have to wonder what's happening. So that's the last feature. And that is it for me. Again, it's really wonderful to be able to connect with you guys in one way or another. I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey everybody, this is Kathy. Nice to be back with you. And if you're looking at, thanks for all that, Pat. That was great. Everybody, I'm hoping you're following along through the agenda on your own, whether you have a hard copy or a copy on your screen. So this is officially section 2 that I'm going to cover with you, starting with rendering enhancements. So the first bullet item under rendering enhancements is a new way in version 28 to set up your Windows printer configurations, or to edit your existing Windows printer configurations, or to duplicate those Windows printer configurations. Just by show of hands, everyone, if you don't mind, can you show me by raising your hand if you are indeed driving Windows printers from your DP2 output and therefore using Windows printer configurations? Yeah, quite a few of you are raising hands. And you know, you might not know the answer to that, you know, depending on your role in the lab, but for those of you who are using Windows printer configurations, you might be, thanks for that. I'm just going to put those hands down. You might be good to go, like with the configurations that you have. You can see me navigating, by the way, to the printer's printer data table. That's one way of getting to the new user interface. Another way is from printer setup, using printer setup or the printer wizard, but I'm going to take you there this method as well. And George, I knew your hand was going to go up there. Thanks for being on the call, and thanks for being so instrumental in helping us with this. It was driven by your feature request, and I apologize to those of you when I go through an item if I don't necessarily know who the feature request came from. I apologize for that, but when I do know, I'll give you a shout out. So I'm going to go to my Windows printers here. I only have an HP DeskJet, so I don't have anything too exciting, but I do have a lot of configurations. So I'm going to right click on the Windows printer and go to this Windows printer configuration. This is brand new in version 28. So we can't wait, you know, for those of you to get your hands on it who might be able to use it because this is the first iteration of this in DP2. You might be able to, you know, help us with additional features. We always look to you to bring these items to life, use them in the field, use them in production, and then please, you know, send your additional feature requests into us so that we can continue to improve on something new. So I have this DeskJet selected here in the center column. The first column, everyone, would be your Windows devices, and this is a hot link. This would open up the control panel and include the obvious default printer, and of course, your methodology of making another printer, the default printer, right-clicking on it. So this is your physical Windows printers. The second column would be your DP2 Windows printers from your database. You know, I have 3 of them out of all of my printers. If I close this, this is a hot link to just the Windows printers inside of the printer data table. And then these are all of the configurations. A really big change that did not exist before this version is the ability to get back into your properties in your page setup. Like I mentioned when I first got started with this, for many of you, you might be using a Windows printer configuration that you set up, you know, years ago when you got your device, and you know it's working like a champ, and maybe you don't have to go back and examine the properties and or the page setup attributes of that configuration. But if you do, or if you did need to get back to check out those properties and page setup configurations, we made it very hard, if not impossible, in the legacy version that's still available in DP2. But this would certainly be the way, because we weren't providing you a way of getting back to your device properties. Obviously, you're going to get a device properties box that matches your device, your driver. This is just simple HP. You can see I'm on color and landscape, and then you can go to page setup and you can see those parameters, page size, orientation, margins, and things like that. If you need to create a new one, this is a hot link too, by the way, in this third panel, the printer configurations. That's going to open up on your system in your shared KPDP2 print records Windows printer directory. You'll have respective Windows printers, and then inside of each of those at this level anyway, at this point in the hierarchy, you'll have all the configurations that pertain to that respective printer. But it's super easy here to go ahead and duplicate. For example, if you know I want to take this, let's see, which one don't I have I don't know, I'll just choose this HP DeskJet 5x7 landscape. I could duplicate it. I'd have to find it in here. We just didn't want you to clobber it, so you have to sort of find it again in your list. You could give it some sort of duplicate name and save it. And then you have that immediately available to you. You can go inside of properties and or page setup. They're going to be as is when you did the duplicate. So it's going to start off this new one based on the previous one you had selected. And then you can just go ahead and make your change and save that change and so on. We think it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you get here, you can press F1 to get some more help. You can do brand new configurations from here. As long as the printer, you know, does exist, and you can do new configurations from here. You can delete the configurations from here. And then the last thing I want to show you, just for this high level overview, is you can get to the wizard, you know, that printer setup. When I first started this, I mentioned that you could also get to this from your printer wizard or your printer setup, which I am right now. When you go through a new setup using Setup Wizard or a new printer, you'll have the legacy method currently, but we're currently working on giving you the way to use this new interface. But what you can do for existing configurations, because you might get to your existing configurations, you know, from your printer setup. That's the only way prior to version 28 that we gave you the ability to get back to your existing printer configurations and get to those page setup parameters. But this method, the legacy method, doesn't get you back to your printer properties. So that's why if you're used to finding your you know, existing printer configurations using printer setup, you can now press this button and get to this much more user-friendly, much more helpful methodology of getting to a configuration file and choosing the properties and page setup. So I think that's probably enough information on that. Put an asterisk by this item, you know, in your agenda if it's something that you want to take a look at when you get onto version 28. And if you have any questions about it now, please feel free to go ahead and put those in the question box for the DP2 team that's behind the scene. Moving on to the next bullet item, everyone. The second bullet item under rendering enhancements. I want to show you a new function that we put inside of export after render. So I'm going to the export taskbar, export after render. You might be using this for creating a text file, some sort of data file after your jobs are exported or after the whole order is exported, like maybe subject information stuff. I'll show you where it is. I'm just going to choose edit here. This is it, this new checkbox. I'll click on this to get some help. There's also help by pressing F1 on this whole dialog box. You'll find it there too, but I think this pretty much says it all. This should normally be off, which it is by default, because probably many of you are using a shoot description ID to tie all of your respective orders, subject, data information together. But for those of you who are not using a shoot description, I can't remember exactly who put this request in, but thank you for it, because when you guys request good features, everybody, you know, takes advantage of that if we feel like, you know, it can, you know, go further than just the one request and help all of you out. So you would choose this checkbox for your export after render that you might be using on your jobs and or at the end of your order to write a data file. And in this case, you would choose this because your subject data exists respectively tied to your orders and not a shoot description ID. So just a little bit of information on that to whet your appetite. If you need help when you get it, if you need reminders or anything, that's what we're always here for on a regular basis. So in the interest of time, I'm going to close that up and go to the next one. The third bullet, everyone, underneath rendering enhancements. Let me actually pull this one up. If by chance you're not looking at it, it wouldn't really make much sense. So let me go back to the place on our agenda. It's this third one, the last one. So look at the very last item, special image effects.txt file. That's a text file. This is for programmers. So this is just a shout out, okay? Because if you're a programmer, you get it. If you're a programmer and you use this or have used it the way it existed before, this enhancement, you'll really get it. If you need to tell somebody about it, point out this bullet item to somebody in the lab that might be interested in this. The special image effects.txt file in your macros folder contains an enhancement to allow a managed or unmanaged DLL to have access to the full image buffer of a node in one call, a single call, which is very different. Previously, it took multiple calls with each accessing a single strip of the image, and it was only available for an unmanaged DLL. If this bullet item makes sense to you, I'm very glad, because to be honest, it really doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not a programmer, but we find that you are all equally important in this call. So we will share with you user information. We will share with you programmer specific information. If you programmers out there have any questions about this specific item, please be sure to put a question in the question box for the development team. I'm actually going to go to the next page because the next two bullet items are also just shout outs for you programmers under the command importer enhancement section of our agenda. Two improvements. If you're using command importers, the command importer class or the commands.txt file. First one, if you're using command importer class, that can now accept an optional schema ini file for CSV importing, that you can provide additional information for that data, because sometimes Microsoft interprets field data as numeric when it can contain string data. Again, if that makes sense to you, I'm so happy And the next one is we added a set rotation from metadata so that you can grab any rotation value from your metadata, from your feeders when you're bringing orders into the system, images into the system, and you can grab that rotation and metadata and use that in the database. So I really hope that for some of you programmers on the call that you find these items to be helpful and useful. Okay, so I'm going to go through the rest of these items back in DP2. So I really hope you are looking at an agenda because I think it's hard for me to sort of bounce back and forth. So I'm going to go back to DP2, and the next item has several new items under System Monitor. And I have a poll for you, but let me first go to Activity and open up System Monitor to remind you. We introduced System Monitor, which is a big picture bird's eye view from whatever computer you're on. You can look at basically all your instances throughout the lab and see what's going on. Instances that are running, instances that are shut down, what's going on with your printers, your printer queues, your command importers, and your workers. So really cool stuff. We introduced this in version 27. We added some new enhanced features in version 27, and it just makes sense that now we're in version 28. So we're going to continue to work on this based on you using it, you helping us figure out how this could be even more useful to you. So with that, we'd love to know how and if you're using this. So let's take another opportunity for a poll here, if you don't mind. And I just launched our second poll on this System Monitor feature. So the question is your lab using DP2 System Monitor? You've got a variety of choices there. I think this only allows for one choice, everyone. So please take a moment and let us know. It's fine, if you don't know anything about it, it's not your role. Right? But remember, we try to appreciate the stuff we're learning about DP2, even though it doesn't affect maybe our role in the lab. We totally understand if you haven't tried it yet, because, we're only talking a year later since we introduced this. And I mentioned it before, we are totally on board with whatever your normal upgrade schedules are in DP2 and totally respect that. So I think most of the responses have come in. I just sort of slow down and see if about 75% of you have replied to this. All right, well, I'm going to close it there, and then I'll share the results to see what we got. Good. So it looks like a pretty good mix of either you're using it and you're finding it valuable, or you just haven't tried it yet, and maybe the reason why you haven't tried it yet is because you're not on either version 27 or 27.1. So this is our opportunity to, promote this a little bit. I think it's our opportunity for everyone on the call to say, hey, a number of labs on the call are using it and finding it valuable. So I know we're a tight-knit community, and I know you guys talk to each other and share a lot of information with each other, and I think this is a good opportunity to do just that, sort of get a pulse on who's using what inside of DP2, and it's always helpful for us to have an understanding of who uses what inside of DP2, because that's how we can really manage our development time, our development resources, our QA testing time. We always really like to know who's using what. I have a little bit more on that to share in just a little bit after I go through the what's new list for System Monitor. So sorry for those of you who aren't using it yet, hang in there with me. I will go through the stuff that's new in version 28 with an understanding that you haven't had a chance to use it and try it yet. But I think just this, overall system pulse that I was talking about, every page inside a System Monitor has some helpful information right on the screen by clicking on the header. You can get more information by pressing F1, of course, to get to the full-blown help in the system. I'll go through the new stuff with you, though. Let me just show you this. These are all hot links. If you click on any one of these, you're basically going to be brought to the respective system summary screen. A lot of these values and numbers and totals and errors or whatever it might be are updated automatically as soon as it happens, and then others are refreshed based on your refresh interval in seconds or pressing this button. But a number of items, like if you get errors that pop up, if you have like blocking dialogues, something that would prevent the user from like doing anything else in DP2, something that you might want to know about, although some dialogues, you know, say blocking, but it's just because the operator's doing something, like, you know, maybe they're in, you know, the, I don't know, maybe they're in the middle of doing something, and as soon as they're done doing it, the blocked message goes away. But you know, usually they're a good indication to take a look at something. But anyway, as soon as you click on something, like, it takes you to the respective page on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go to the new stuff now and start showing you what's new. Starting with your running instances. Always look at the top of the screen. Always click on the help that's on the top of the screen. And even though you've never used this before, for some of you, just by going from page to page, screen to screen, you'll probably figure out exactly what it does. And from the summary page, you can click on those hot links and it'll take you right to the respective item in the respective page. But this is new. Shout out to whoever, I don't know who it was, I'm sorry, but a shout out to you that wanted the ability to shut down any instance from your office, right? The whole idea is you don't have to walk around the lab and do a shutdown. You don't have to walk over and do a restart. Shut down all and restart all. These are really cool. These will restart or shut down all instances except the one that you're on. The idea being is you want to have a pulse. You want to keep a pulse on what's being shut down, what's getting stuck. You know, maybe something can't shut down because there's a blocking dialogue on the screen or something like that. So you want to sort of have a pulse if you're doing this from your office or from one computer out of 100 in the lab. So the idea is if you choose one of these, it'll try to shut down all of your instances except the one you're on. I don't have a very robust setup, everyone. I'm on one workstation with 4 instances, but I'm still going to do a shutdown all. I think I poised one of my workstations. I'll find out here in just a second. I think I did poise one of them to have a blocking dialogue pop up. I think I left something hanging, like I don't know, I made a change in the order data table without saving it type thing. So instantly, and this is not new, we had the block status available for you, but we did change one thing concerning blocked. The status says blocked here. We did change this page pertaining to block statuses. It used to say operator intervention required. I think it was one of you who said, hey, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. So it just made more sense if we call it blocked on this screen and another screen I'm about to show you. Let's call it the same thing over here. You guys can always share, you know, big or sort of minor things like that with us that just make it easier for you and your people in the lab. If you see anything at all, you know, using this, or once you start using it, this goes for anything in DP2, please always let us know how we can make it better, easier, and more efficient. This other page is new here. All of these pages have been here. Obviously I showed you we're on the running page. These buttons for shutting down and restarting are new. This page is new, shutting down. It sort of goes hand in hand with shutting down all. right? Or restarting all. I had that block status, but this could be your pulse that you keep on all of your instances after doing a restart. And by the way, you might want to do a restart all, because if DP2's been running a long time, if any Windows program has been running for a long time, things can start to leak and become problematic. So you might want to do a restart all once in a while. You might want to do a shutdown all if you're preparing for a DP2 upgrade. So I'm sure you have other reasons for shutting down and restarting, but those could be a very, good couple of reasons. Let me go to this block. So I did a shutdown all. My instance 3014 couldn't shut down because it's blocked. If you then go to this blocked page, it's going to tell me a little bit about it. It's going to say basically something's hasn't been saved. That might not be enough information for you to clear it from here. So maybe once in a while you still have to go walk over to a computer and see what's going on. But I know that I left it in a state of making, some non-important change in my order data table. So I'll go ahead and choose to change those, to save that change. And then I only have one running instance because now they've all successfully shut down. So thank you again for that, whoever needed that and recommended that, because everybody gets it based on your good recommendation. Moving through our list here, I covered the first two bullets under System Monitor Enhancements. I'm on the third one when using the delete function on either old versions of DP2 or unused versions of DP2. This stuff is not new. These pages have been here, super helpful information for old workstations that DP2 still has in the database, but you might physically not have that workstation anymore and or that instance anymore. Part of what's new here, like this workstation, doesn't exist for me, but it's in my workstation settings table in the database. We weren't giving you the ability until version 28 to actually view the settings. I mean, you could have always gone, those of you who know what you're doing, you could have always gone to your workstation setting data table. You could have found these records manually for this particular workstation and this particular instance, and you could have seen, what the heck was going on just by manually going there. But we think we just made it a little bit easier for you to view the settings that are about to be deleted and then go ahead and delete them. I'm not going to delete them. I sort of like having my old stuff hanging around so that I can demo that, but I think you get the idea of that one. So that's just a new, we always gave you the ability to delete from here, and we did delete this row and we did delete the workstation settings. We just weren't giving you the ability to like say, whoa, wait a minute, what the heck am I deleting? So just gives you that level of confidence to see what it is that you're deleting out of your system. Fourth bullet under System Monitor Enhancements. For your command importer recent errors, for those of you that work with command importers, you probably know that once you see a command importer error, like in your command importer dialog, once you stop and restart, the errors go away from the command importer dialog, and then they get stored in your activity data table. We always talk about the activity data table, everyone, in these workshops. Probably many of you are in the habit of deleting old activity. That's why we have delete date old. Many of you know that if you don't maintain and delete your activity data table, it grows and grows and grows. Many of you have found that out because it eventually started causing problems. And then you found out about, maintaining and taking care of your activity data table. So anyway, what we did on this unresolved command importer errors, if you aren't in the habit of deleting your activity data table on a regular basis, you might want to investigate what these errors, are, when they occurred. So what we did here, this page is not new. Recent errors is not new. The only thing that's new in this version is the ability to select on these hot links in the first column. either the top item or an individual row. Even if you select just an individual row, it'll just highlight that row in the activity data table. So again, we're just giving you like the ability to understand, you know, to get directly to these items that are still hanging out because they have been unresolved. They're command importer errors that happen sometime in history. And if you're not in the habit of, you know, taking care of your activity data table on a regular basis, then we'll give you the opportunity now in version 28 to get to those rows. You can highlight them, you can delete them. I'll delete them from here, and they're instantly deleted from the recent errors page. And one more bullet item under here, everyone. We've added the ability to send to the DP2 support team, to the support box rather, support configuration and usage information. That's super helpful to us. I'll explain why. It's not in system summary, but it does have to do with this system services usage data. So I'll go to where you actually configure it and send it, and I'll explain it a little bit more. But it does partially, just partially have to do with this type of information, like KPARs, 36 pics, third-party interfaces that you might be using. Having this information from a DP2 team's perspective, everyone, I mentioned it before, is incredibly valuable because, you know, let's say that like 36 pics, right? 36 pics is adding new glass glare. The first thing that we always want to know is how many of our ProLab partners are using 36 pics. Or, you know, if Visas tells us they're adding something new, the first thing we want to know is, okay, how many labs are using it? What kind of, you know, what kind of volume of work are they putting through it? This is how we determine to allocate both our development resources and our QA and testing resources. I mean, this type of information is invaluable to us, but we're not going to get it unless you send it to us. And we're not going to make you send it to us, but it's super, super helpful. This stuff I think is super, super helpful to you too. Like now I'm in the data table that tracks like on a daily basis how much work, you know, your lab is moving through these services. We think this is super helpful for you guys, maybe when it comes to reconciliation with these services and stuff like that. So anyway, the function that I'm going to show you now is not in System Monitor, but it does partially have to do with this service usage summary information. So I wanted to start with a little overview there. And now I'll go to the admin taskbar, and we've added this send config usage information dialog. It's totally up to you, but we would love it. We'd love you to send that service count information. We'd love you to send system information like what OS are you using, what database manager are you using, again, and for the purpose of like us having like a pulse on who's using it, how many people are using it, you know, do we devote developer resources to, you know, improving it or doing something? Do we devote QA resources to testing it? And also, guys, we plan on adding more, you know, really to seeing how this is received. We talked to some of you as we were in development with this. It was like, yeah, sounds great. Anything that we can do to help. So we do plan on adding more though, like for example, for KPARs. For those of you who use KPARs, you know that we deliver credits via a dongle. Well, there's probably a way that we can deliver credits a little bit like of an easier way than using a dongle. So, you know, we want to take everything into consideration, and the only way we really successfully do that is if we know how many of you are using it. Again, the first thing we like to know is how many of our lab partners are using it. We would love it if you came in here when you're on version 28 and chose a workstation that's connected to the internet and chose an instance on that workstation and set it up to automatically send us this usage information and more. It's not there yet, so this is just the first time we're seeing this in DP2, so rightfully so, we'll expect to see this expanded upon. We'd love it if you hit Save Changes. We'd love it if you hit Send this to DP2 support now, and we'll get the information based on connectivity in this. Any questions about it, let us know. It's totally up to you. We did not want to start gathering this information without being totally transparent to you guys. The only way we're going to gather it is if you're willing to send it our way. So take this for what it is. I have to move on to our last item because I'm running out of time, and I know Peter wants to get on with you and share some information before we open it up for Q&A. So the last item I'm going to share with you is just a reminder, mostly for you developers that use KPL Help. Just want to let you know that KPL Help is new quite often, way more than just these 2 DP2 releases a year. And the way you find out is you can update your KPL Help at any time by going through these buttons, check for KPL, download the KPL. All the steps are basically right here. This is really just a shout out and a reminder for those of you, who use KPL Help, who are using, are developing and programming inside of DP2. If it comes to, finding a function or an operator, or something that you're interested in learning, interfacing with DP2, you'll see that some of these screens are under construction. You'll see that other screens have information. If you search for a particular object, for example, you might find, hey, there's currently no help for that. But if it's something that you would like information and help on, go ahead and request documentation. We're finding that when we first put this out there, we got quite a few hits, but we haven't gotten many hits lately. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to say, hey, this is still here. We still want to grow it. We want to grow it based on your input. So please don't forget about it. It's here. And I have one more thing to cover, and I know this is really super quick, everyone. It is in here, and it's also in the helper, in the product helper. So let me see if I can find it in here. Where's macro modifiers? The macro modifiers page, Pat mentioned it a little bit. She showed you the help file. We have a layout that you, or whether you're a programmer or whether you're a DP2 product designer, this is the actual layout. There's 2 ways to get to it. This is one way. From your layout helper from a product is another way. The blue items are the label. This is all in the help portion of it, and it's on this screen. But the macro modifiers themselves are in these rendered text, black text items. And if you pop one of them open, you'll find the macro modifier. It's always, after the dot, and I'm just using a very simple macro that says, use the text that's in probably the respective node, like this is node number 10,031. I looked at the bottom left-hand corner, everyone. So this is just a simple macro that says use this to begin with, but replace it, because this is a replace with macro modifier, replace these words with something else. So I really can't get into much more detail than this. We just wanted to point it out. And this is accessible both from KPL Help, and it's also accessible, I'll get there as quickly as I can. Once I open up my products table, I'll go to any random product, I'll right click and choose layout helpers. This is another way without going into KPL Help, because KPL Help does require admin privileges. And if you're a product designer, maybe you don't have admin privileges, so you can get to this sample macro modifier example from layout helpers as well. And with that, I'm about to turn it over to Peter, who I think only has about 5 minutes of content, and that'll leave us with we think, a good amount of time for our open Q&A session. So Peter, if you want to start to come on, I will, you're welcome to share your screen, Peter, at any time.
Kathy,
And
did we have a poll also?
yes, I do. Yeah, but Peter's welcome to come on. I think I can still launch a poll if Peter were to share his screen, but I'll go ahead and launch it right now. So you guys know Peter V. He's with our support team, and he's, you know, our service desk guy, our help guy. He's incredibly awesome. For those of you that use Service Desk, I mentioned in the beginning, Service Desk is the way that we are in constant communication with each other. You guys can reach us on Service Desk anytime. The team does a phenomenal job of getting back to you in many cases, like almost immediately. It's pretty incredible. But we want to find out if you're using successfully the DP2 Service Desk, how you're using it. You can go ahead and start answering those questions. It looks like you are. This is, I think it's multiple. Yeah, you can choose multiple. The only one that didn't make it in here, just because we run out of room, is like you might use it for training requests too, but you know, you could use the support to submit a support ticket. You could use that because training's not specifically called out here. Looks like about 70% of you have voted, but I don't see about 73. I'm still seeing some responses coming in. We're particularly interested if any of you can't get in to log into DP2, or if you don't know and it's not your job. I mean, I don't know, maybe you still should have, if you do something in DP2, you know, I guess your manager would know best, but lots of different types of users have access to DP2 Service Desk. So if it's something that you're answering, I don't know, not my job, I don't know, you might want to talk to your manager and find out about getting a Service Desk account, because there can be more than one Service Desk account per lab. Certainly in some labs, many of you have those. So I'll just share the results. Looks like the vast majority of you are using Service Desk. We love to see this one, that there's not a one of you that can't log into Service Desk, but some of you are falling into that, hey, I don't know anything about Service Desk. I'm not sure if you should maybe talk to your manager or someone at the lab about it, because the more the merrier for us, but you know, maybe up to somebody at the lab too. So thanks for sharing that. I am going to turn this over to Peter V, and after Peter V's section, we will open it up for Q&A. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, for some reason, Kathy, I'm trying to present, but I'm unable to share my screen.
Okay.
I'm going to try to make you the presenter again and then try to get it back.
Okay. So I'm showing my screen. You want to try
now?
now?
I'm going to try to make me the, oh, so I don't have a presenter. Okay, yeah, here it is.
You found it? Okay.
Yeah.
And then shows, perfect. We see it, Peter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about that. So thanks a lot for telling us how Service Desk is working out for you. Be sure to let us know if you have any problems accessing the Service Desk, or if you want to add other people from your team. We want as many people to provide us with input as possible, since you guys push DP2 as far as your imagination takes you. Let's find where limitations exist, and we'll see if we can get rid of them together. Some problems you find may require just a tweak on our end to fix a small bug or change in your workflow. However, some issues can cause downtime or need to redo work. It may require a lot of back and forth between you and us to figure it out and fix it. So don't get frustrated. We'll figure it out together, as we did with these important reliability bug fixes. We worked with a couple of labs to fix a problem that caused the merging of a background with a chroma key PNG image and it failed. Now this resulted in a render error. The problem occurred in certain situations where the image node had a background image and an override image rotation value. The next one, a lab pointed out some memory leaks that ended up happening in head alignment. This would eventually cause DP2 to run out of memory and shut down. And the last one, we worked with another lab having memory leaks and errors in the functions that convert PNGs to other file formats. There were other smaller bugs resolved, and these are listed in Cumulative Changes version 28.0, and you'll find that in the DP2 knowledge base on the DP2 service desk. So we really appreciate your working with us to ensure DP2 is always getting better. So thank you very much. And I'm done, so we can have some Q&A time.
Awesome. We really appreciate your time, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yep, take care. We're here for you when you need us.